ribs and a whole packer brisket. It's the flat and the point. So we're gonna get these dressed up. I've only got enough propane to do a couple hours worth of smoke on the brisket, so we're going to kind of do a Texas cheat on it. Smoke it for a little bit to get that flavor and color, and then we're going to wrap it and put it in the oven. Okay. So one of the things that I like to do with, especially with the beef ribs, because they're so big, I'll go ahead and cut them apart and then season them and put them on the smoker. That way, when they're done, let them rest for a minute, and then everybody can just have at it. You don't have to try and cut them apart while they're screaming hot, or with a bunch of drooling people standing all around you. Another thing that I like to do, when it comes to seasoning ribs, you can get away with a little more seasoning on beef ribs because they're kind of big and meaty. But, I mean, even though it looks like there's quite a bit of meat and fat on these, when they cook down, they're going to cook down to nothing. They really, really do shrink up when you cook them. So, that being said, when you season these, you go take a big old bite of meat, you don't want it to be entirely encrusted with seasons, especially if you got a salty seasoning, because then that's all you're going to taste, is that salty seasoning. So here I've got some Everglades cactus dust. It's got a little smoky, a little sweet, a little spice. It's a really good seasoning. I like it. And we're just going to sprinkle it all around. Then we're going to flip them all over. So you'll see I did not remove the membrane on these. I'm one of those guys that likes the membrane. It's kind of fatty and a little chewy, and if you get them crisped up just right, I kid you not, it's like bacon. So if you've never left the membrane on and tried to smoke it like that, you're missing out. Okay, we'll set these guys to the side and we'll get going on our brisket. Okay, so over here, see all the fat cap on there? Dry it off a little bit here. Most people, when they're doing a brisket, they trim the fat cap and try and get it, I guess, evenly thick. But if we take a look at this guy, let's see if I can just get you a better angle on that. Okay, see how this end is only, give or take 3/4 of an inch, but this end, you're looking at about 3 inches. That's because you have what's called the point and the flat. Okay, the point is this bigger end, and there's a seam of fat that separates the two. That's all just leaf fat right here on top. If you've ever been cutting up meat and your sharp knife suddenly becomes not so sharp, it's because of this stuff right here. This leaf fat will coat your blade and make it seem like it's dull. So there's two ways that you can kind of cheat these apart. You can either follow that fat seam and separate the point from the flat, or you try and make them equal dimensions, equal thicknesses. It's kind of hard to do, especially with all that fat on the back, but we'll give it a go. We'll see what we can do. Some of this loose stuff I'm just gonna take off. This thing's got plenty of fat on it. We're not gonna hurt anything by doing that. Split apart now, and everything is about the same thickness. Okay. So the point, you can see, has a lot more fat than the flat. Okay. It's got fat on the outside, but not much fat within the muscle compared to, I mean, look at that. It's not like Wagyu, but there's a lot of fat in there, okay? So typically what happens is you will have a fatty point and your flat will turn dry, okay? Because, you know, by having the, well, put it back where it was, as you can see, okay? By including the point on there, by the time the point is cooked to temperature, the flat will be overdone. And if you do it the other way, when the flat comes to temperature, the point won't be ready yet, okay? So by separating the two, you make basically two pieces that are the same thickness. So now, if you're going to follow temperature on both of them, you just stick a probe in one and stick a probe in the other and watch the temperatures. And they should be done relatively the same time. Okay. I'm a fan of the spicy brown mustard. For those of you that don't know, if you apply like a mustard to the meat, kind of rub it all around, it helps your seasoning stick to it, and it helps you to kind of form that crust on the outside. Some people like just plain yellow mustard. I'm a fan of the spicy brown. Golden's is my favorite, but if you can't get that, just any store brand spicy brown mustard will be pretty close. Rub that all around. And you'll notice I didn't put any mustard on the ribs. I don't think they really need it. I've done it on pork ribs, and it comes out alright. I mean, I like it. I just don't think it's worth the effort for what it does for the meat. Okay. Got that all massaged in there. And now, unlike the ribs, where one bite and you're done, brisket, you're going to have quite a bit of meat compared to the seasoning on the outside of it. So you can really coat them well, especially if you've got a salty seasoning. You can get quite a bit of spice on a brisket, and it won't be overpowering. Okay. Some people only like to season the meat side, not the fat side. I like to season the whole thing, because as the fat renders down, it's going to help pull some of that seasoning into the meat. And when you're eating it, you can take a bite and it's not just straight fat. You know, most people will just spit that out or not even eat it. But if you've got it dressed up and seasoned, there's no reason to not eat it. It's good for you anyway. Plenty of vitamins, A, D, E, and K. Those are the fat-soluble ones. It's got a good bit of flavor. I mean, it's interesting. A lot of the athletes and stuff, you'll see them, they talk about carb loading. When you eat a lot of carbs, your body processes them all, because they're easy to digest and easy to absorb, and it's easy for your body to store them. That's why things like paleo and Atkins diets are they're popular and they work, because you're not giving your body carbs, and so it's having to get what it needs out of proteins and fats, which your body can do easy enough, but it takes more energy to do it compared to carbs. That's why you lose weight. And so your body will take all those carbs, and it gets stored as glycogen. That's your intermuscular fat. That's all this stuff in there. The white marbling in your meat, that's your intermuscular fat. And that's what carbs do. That's why grain-fed beef tastes so nice. It's got all that glycogen, the intermuscular fat. And so the intermuscular fat, when it cooks and renders, that's what helps give you that nice and juicy meat. It's full of flavor. Now, you might think I'm crazy putting all this trimmed fat into the smoker, but one of the things that you learn about cooking, especially those in the South, fat is flavor. And if you're making vegetables, green beans or collard greens or even baked beans, you want to add chunks of fat. Most people, especially like with collard greens, you would add smoked pork hock or smoked jowls, because it helps to impart some of that nice smoky flavor, and add a little bit of nutrients to it. So, these, you don't really have to put them in any particular order. They don't have to be evenly spaced and all that, because these aren't going to be in here for terribly long. Just enough to pick up that smoked flavor and get pulled out. If you're one of the, well, I probably shouldn't call you control freaks, but if you have to know what the temperature is of your stuff while it's cooking, you're going to have a thermometer. Now, they say this is supposed to stay like 10 to 15 inches away from a heat source, which means half of my cable is now useless because it has to be that far away from the smoker. So then I go from here to here. Well, that doesn't leave me a whole lot of room. So, engineers and product designers, take note. Quit being skimpy with the cables. Okay. You don't have to put 2 probes into each piece of meat. Okay, because you look here. I now have that much space. Okay? That's just ridiculous. So you can see it says rares 120, medium rares 130, and mediums 140, well is 155. Pork should go to 145, chicken should go to 165. We want to take the brisket to about between 150 and 170 while it's in the smoker. It's going to take as much smoke as it can by that point, and after that we're going to wrap it in foil and put it in the oven. Okay, and we want to take it to an internal temperature of at least 205. At that point, all the collagen has broken down. It'll be nice and juicy. It'll be cooked through. And then we want to take it out of the oven, and we'll wrap it in a towel at that point and put it in the cooler and let it rest for 45 minutes or so before we take it out. That lets all the juices kind of redistribute in the meat and kind of level out. That way when you slice it, the juice stays in your slices rather than going all over the cutting board. Alright, so the fat side of the point is kind of lagging behind at 117. The rest of the two are about 10 degrees apart, 135 to 143. So we're doing okay there. We're getting close to wanting to pull them off to wrap them. But right now, we're going to pull off the ribs and the fat. Look at those. Starting to render out real nice. Got a little bit of that smoky color to them. Okay, so we're between 140 and 160 on the point and the flat. I'm going to go ahead and pull those out and get them wrapped. And we'll let the ribs go for a little bit longer. And we will let those rest for 45 minutes or so. Like soft butter.